All right. Hello, everybody. I think we have all three judges here. So if everybody's ready, just a few. Oh, hi.
A question, do you guys want to have any kind of grace period for your speeches? And if so, you guys need to agree on how long.
Yes, I was just going to bring that up. We typically do a 15-second grace period, if that's okay with everybody.
Sounds
Oh,
great to us.
perfect. And then we take our POIs verbally. So if you just unmute and say POI, same for you? Okay, great.
And one other thing, maybe I missed it. Who's on which side?
Yeah, let's go around and do some introductions.
Can you do introductions? I'm gonna get water really quick.
Okay, sure. So my partner Chen Mei and I are on the government side of this debate. I can resend the resolution in the chat. We are on the government. We are from Canyon Crest Academy. My partner is the first speaker, and I am the second speaker.
And then, hi everyone. My name is Teddy Sipkins. We're from Winward. We're going to be on the negation side of this debate. I'll be your first speaker today, and then my partner Carter.
And I'll be your second speaker.
Thanks.
All right, I'm the first speaker. I have 7 minutes on the clock. Is anyone not ready? All right, cool. My time will start on my next word. Hi everyone, my name is Chinmay, and today I send an affirmation in the resolution that this house will keep politics out of sports. Okay, let's get into some definitions right away. So how would we define this house? We would like to define this house as the Olympic Committee, and I'll give you 3 reasons why. First reason is that the Olympics is the biggest international sporting event ever, right? 206 nations participate in it actively, and that's around 3,000 athletes, well, every 4 years. And that's the second reason. And the third reason is that because of the international nature of this topic, we also think that this is like the place where people come together, right? People from different cultures with different political values, and this is a moment when they come together, and this is the moment where we see clashes happen, right? So we would like to define this house as the Olympic Committee, and then also be utilizing the framework of utilitarianism to see if keeping politics in sports is going to be net beneficial or net harm to the Olympic sporting events in general. Okay, and then this can be either through like audience participation, entertainment, whatever. Okay, and then second definition we'd like to offer is the definition of would. So would we think that this is a value resolution? Should we choose one over the other? Should we prioritize one over the other? Okay, so what would look like if you want some more like, I guess, tangible things? For example, it can be no political statements on jerseys, or it can be banning like political gestures during rounds, and also just like guaranteeing the neutrality of judges. Okay, so let's get into right away about what's the status quo right now. While my opponents might tell you that a lot of historical moments exist, right? When I mean they're gonna mention a lot, but I'm not gonna mention them here. But those instances are different than, well, what's happening right now. What makes today different is that, for example, according to the brownuniversity.edu, polarization is increasing more dramatically than ever. So while they might argue it was a good thing back then, but we think that it's no longer applicable today. And I will get into why in my first contention. Okay,
POI.
sure.
Was Colin Kaepernick kneeling during the national anthem a political statement?
I think so. Okay, and then contention 1 is going to be athletic skills are independent of politics. For example, Russia was a nation that was banned from the 2024 Paris Olympics, and it was incredibly hard for Russian athletes to compete. Well, this is just not fair to the athletes because they didn't do anything, or they might not hold the same political opinion as the Russian government. For example, the average career for an Olympic athlete is only 4 to 5 years, which means that they might most likely only get one chance to compete in the Olympics. And also, Olympic athletes earn a lot of money from like getting, for example, a gold medal, right? So they also have a lot of financial incentives in participating in those competitions. And that's usually around like 37,000 for every gold medal, 22,000 for every silver and 15,000 for every each bronze medal. So we can also see that Olympic training costs a lot too. And it can't just like they can't just lose all their money, all their chances, and even their whole career because of like politicization in sports, right? It's just unfair to the individual. Okay, and what is the impact here? The impact is going to be slippery slope, right? Because if the Olympic Committee can get to decide, well, who's being, I guess, righteous or who's not being righteous, then it just turns into we can kind of ban any country we don't agree with, right? We kind of ban we ban Russia because of the war that's going on with Ukraine, right? But what we don't see is that a lot of countries were actively engaged in warfare as well. A lot of people are dying daily due to like structural causes, right? And what we don't see is that why is the Olympic, well, it's a slippery slope because the Olympic can just start banning every country that's like, I guess, committing like structural genocide or just like committing any warfare in general, which is like a lot of country right now. Okay. And then the second impact is going to be, well, their career is going to be wasted and like a lot of opportunities and money they're going to lose. And then the second contention is going to be how politics can undermine unity and entertainment. So the uniqueness is that in order to attract the most viewer, while the International Olympic Committee wants to avoid polarizing topics such as politics, right? Sports can serve as a unifying force that bring people together regardless of nationality, ideology, or background. Even events like Olympics or FIFA World Cup attract like a lot of audiences, right? Who sit aside each other with different political opinions, right? And when politics infiltrates sports, it really alienates the fans who want to watch this just for pure enjoyment, just like as an escape from daily conflicts and politics, right? And what we do see is that when we include politics in sport, we also lose revenue. So this house, as the International Olympic Committee, will not want to like lose revenue, right? We want to promote entertainment and make sure that well, people are enjoying and watching the sports. Okay, so first of all, keeping politics out of sports is necessary, and also keeping politics out of sport is sufficient for like entertainment. Okay, secondly, when sports organizations engage in politics, they really risk alienating key stakeholders and causing economic damages. So, for example, instead of promoting genuine discourse, a lot of the statements can appear like to be more performative or even hypocritical that can lead to backlashes from both sides. For example, China has given almost $1 million in both 2018 and 2019 into the International Olympic Committee, and it's currently the vice president of the committee. So what we do see, if we do promote conflict on both sides, for example, over the Taiwan issue, what we do see is that China can like drastically withdraw their fund from international committee. And what is the impact under that? Athletes like literally losing their career and also just less events, less entertainment in general. And then last contention is going to be on unfair and unequal standards, right? For example, athletes should still be able to keep their personal opinions, but like obviously not express them during like their professional job, right? Obviously, for example, Japan was banned from the 1948 Summer Olympics because of the role they played in World War II. But however, US also dropped a few bombs in Japan. However, they were not banned, right? So we can see that there's like really this subjective judgment in this. And also, basically involving politics in sports is just gonna escalate into group punishment, and that is double standards, and the AF rejects that. Thank you.
All right, cool, great speech. Sorry, I'm just gonna take a quick sip of water. Is everyone ready? And then I'll give an off-time roadmap and jump in if that's okay. Okay, cool. Off-time roadmap. I'm gonna go over some framework stuff. Then I'm going to go over our case. Then I'll go over my opponent's case. Cool. Begin in 3, 2, 1. All right. Hello, judges. My name is Theodore Sipkins. I'm going to be your first and third speaker today, strongly negating the resolution that this house would keep politics out of sports. First, let's go over some definitions. I'm going to counter their definition of this house, first of all. So we've defined this house as just a rational actor. Like we say that defining it as any specific like sports organization is wildly skewing us out of this debate because there's like hundreds of sporting committees, and like choosing choosing one specific one is insane because we would have to prep for every single one. We say that a rational actor here, like just saying, should politics be kept out of sports? Should they not? Is plenty to have a rational debate, and that choosing the IOC is completely skewing us out. One, because it's choosing a specific committee, but two, also because the IOC is a really irrational actor, and it makes decisions based off its own interests and not interests of like what would be like value, what would be the most morally good thing here, which is what we say we should prioritize in a value debate here. So because the IOC is not a good actor, and because it's kind of insane to choose a specific actor here when we could have a good debate, like notwithstanding that, we say it should just be a rational actor. On the value for this round, we think that the value weighing mechanism should be social change. The people who suffer most in our society are those who are marginalized. Social change is key towards helping improve their quality of life. And since they are the ones that are in the most need of help, whichever side creates the most social change should win this round. Furthermore, they didn't define politics or out of sports in this resolution, so we don't really know what it's looked like. But let's clear that up right now. As for the definition of politics, we define it as the activities associated with the governance of a country or other area. Anything advocating for social change by the systems that govern the US is considered politics. As for out of sports, sometimes someone's mere presence in sports is a political statement. This ingrainment cannot be taken away without taking the athlete out of the sport. Furthermore, we tell you that it's not just like having something on your jersey. It's making statements after the game. It's doing like marches like while having that status as an athlete. Our burden here for this debate is that if we prove that politics should in any aspect be involved with sports, we win here. Without further ado, if there aren't any POCs or POIs, I'll get onto my case.
Wait, sorry, I have a POC.
Yeah, I'll pause now.
You're speaking kind of fast. Can you just clarify what you said about like marching after like sports?
Yeah, so I was saying that like anything like considered like politics in sports is an athlete like that's involved in the sports, like making a political statement of any kind. That could be done through like protest. That could be done.
Okay, so like not in round, like after.
Yeah, it doesn't just have to be like in the actual thing. Okay, cool. Okay, awesome. I'll try and speak slower. Sorry. Okay, beginning time in 3, 2, 1. Okay, let's get into our case. Our first contention here is going to be advocacy. So athletes making political statements is key towards mass social change that largely wouldn't happen without it. They say that it's different now than it was 60 years ago because of polarization, but we say that social change is still needed. Like take in the last decade, right? Like Colin Kaepernick unapologetically protested the lack of action being taken by US lawmakers to end police brutality against African Americans, and he did this by refusing to stand during the national anthem, and that led to a wave of people refusing to stand to the national anthem, and it led to a massive movement, and it was like largely a catalyst to a movement in which people protested police brutality. It largely spurred this overarching movement that lasted for like 10 years and is still going today. Furthermore, boxing legend Muhammad Ali is known for his outspoken pride in his African American heritage, as he was for his many achievements as a professional fighter. Like he was a prominent fixture in the civil rights movement and often used his platform to speak out against white supremacy. He also was famous for protesting the Vietnam War, something that was like a massive social change happening in that time. Furthermore, Jackie Robinson is the most important example here. He was the first Black MLB player and a catalyst for the end of racial segregation in professional baseball. What we tell you here is, again, someone's mere like just being a person, like being themselves, can be a political statement if it is against the norm, if it like them being involved advocates for some form of social change. Like this happens with Jackie Robinson. Right now, we say that this happens with like gay athletes coming out in sports. That's like needed to make social change because it's seen as against the norm. That's a political statement. But we should not tell all gay athletes that they shouldn't come out because that would be suppressing their autonomy. That would be suppressing their advocacy. We tell you that Roberto Clemente's career like was key towards like helping the civil rights movement. That without Roberto Clemente, a massive part of the civil rights movement that was spurred on by sports doesn't happen. We tell you that Derrick Rose, just like during the George Floyd protest, made a powerful statement by wearing a shirt that said "I can't breathe" during the supporting Eric Garner during the 2020 playoffs. We tell you that as a whole, all of these are key towards social change. We tell you that this outweighs any impacts they have of entertainment because entertainment is just way less important than key social change, helping millions upon millions of people. If we do not allow all athletes to be political, we remove their one, autonomy, and two, their ability to create substantial social change. But let's go into contention 2, which is going to be freedom of expressions. Sports Sports do not exist in a vacuum. They exist in the context of the world around us, and athletes still have their humanity. Sports' entire purpose is to showcase these humans that have reached the peak of their form, right? And we tell you that taking away their right to express themselves largely diminishes this fundamental aspect of sports, that it is their humanity. Their voice matters. They have the right to say what they think, share information, and demand a better world. When we tell athletes that they have to stay out of politics, you limit people depending on their stature in life. We have to remember the impacts on these athletes. Taking away their autonomy undermines their humanity. And when we undermine someone's autonomy, we undermine everything in this round. But let's go on to their case. So starting off with their first contention about like athletic skills being independent from politics. We tell you that their entire warranting here just isn't like actually doesn't actually stand, because it's all about Russia, and it's all about how like Russia was banned because of Ukraine. One, we tell you that Russia was banned like 12 years ago because of doping. That's completely different than Ukraine. We tell you that we tell you that because of this, like it's not a political issue. It's literally an issue of someone cheating in sports. We say that if you cheat, you probably should be banned. But also too, we tell you that these athletes still get to go. We tell you that the ROC very much exists, and that's the Russian Olympic Committee. They just don't compete under the flag of Russia, which is why Russia is still against it, but the athletes go nonetheless. We tell you that they say it's not fair to athletes. It's not like the athletes. Yeah, sure.
Was it or was it not harder for those Russian athletes to compete?
I mean, it was probably harder because they had to be tested for doping, because Russians were doping like for 12 years straight, and then they were caught doping again 12 years later. But it wasn't harder because of the Russian-Ukraine war. It was harder because they were caught cheating like 30 times. That's not the same thing. Also, their impacts here. One, slippery slope. That's literally a logical fallacy. Like, slippery slope arguments are by definition a logical fallacy because they assume linkage that hasn't actually happened yet and isn't proven. But two, we also say that the IOC is still a bad actor here, and it completely depends on the IOC. On the careers of athletes, we tell you that, like, one, it's if they're cheating, they probably shouldn't have a career because that skews out every other athlete. But we also tell you that two, they're still able to compete if they aren't cheating. Like, that always, if they aren't cheating, that happens. That's completely happened. That's actually like a widespread movement that's happened because of other athletes advocating for social change. So if anything, you're turning this impact because it goes for us, because it proves, because like athletes, because other athletes advocate for these people to actually be able to compete, which means that's like politics in the first place. Sports and politics and sports in the first place made it so the careers of these athletes continue to survive. But two, on their contention about politics undermining unity, we tell you that one, undermining unity is sometimes needed to access change. We also tell you that the IOC is a bad actor here. Like, if we want to go under their definition of the IOC, we tell you that the IOC is pretty corrupt and actually makes a lot of money from making political statements. We tell you that they give you the example of this with China. The IOC allows China to be its vice president because it gives it a lot of money. That's a political statement by choosing one country over the other. We tell you that if we're going with the IOC here, the IOC shouldn't do that because it undermines their profit margins, and the IOC's biggest goal is making profit. We tell you that, like, they say politics alienate others. We tell you that these politics are like, because it's advocating for social change, it alienates others, and people who don't want the social change are alienated. We tell you that's probably good. We also tell you that for unfair and unequal standards, they say the US dropped a bomb in Japan and wasn't banned. We tell you that, like, that's just going to happen no matter what. We tell you that's not like keeping politics out of sports. We tell you that's like the IOC was aligned with the US during World War II and therefore kept the Japan out of sports. But also we tell you that, again, key for social change, that happened once, and like every other year Japan has been in the Olympics. So for these reasons more, please cast your vote for the negation. Thank you.
All right, excellent speech right there by my opponents. Let me just pull out my timer and then we can get into this, because there is going to be a lot to say during this speech. Okay, here we are. Okay, perfect. So, if everybody's ready for a brief off-time roadmap, my name is Aviva Lieberman. I will just be going through some top-of-case issues, and then their case, our case, pretty standard. All right, if everybody's ready, my time of 8 minutes begins in 3, 2, 1. All right, hi judges. So first, let's address this whole idea of this house as a rational actor. So we reject this philosophy because we say that this is inherently flawed, and this is inherently asking the judges to put in their own values by choosing somebody who is an actor that we actually know in the real world, that is the IOC, corrupt or not. It prevents judge intervention and intervention of judge values, which is not something that we should encourage in debate. Just asking for a rational actor is basically just asking somebody else to insert themselves into this round, which is not something that we need to do. My definition of a rational actor is most likely different from your definition of a rational actor. So why is the IOC a fair actor in this case anyway? They say that this frames them out of debate. This is completely and utterly untrue. As you can see, with the refutations to our case, that could have been their case. Saying that the IOC is like a random actor is completely unfair to us, because just assuming that it's going to be a rational actor frames us out of this debate by only saying, okay, just bear with me here. Okay, so why is the IOC rational again? So the IOC is, again, the biggest sports organization in the world. When we're talking about sports, that means that we are talking about the IOC. And I'll give you more examples of why this is relevant later. So what would have been, sure.
Don't you concede that the IOC isn't a completely rational actor because you say that they promote China because they've given them a lot of money?
No one is like completely rational.
Yes, thank you. Again, no one is completely rational, and just asking for a rational actor is, again, just asking for judge intervention, which isn't something that we can encourage in debate. Okay, so let's give you an example of what would be an abusive actor. An abusive actor would be like saying that my neighborhood soccer league that I competed in when I was like 6 years old is the actor of this debate. That is something that would be abusive and framing you out of the debate. The IOC, the biggest sports organization in the world, is not in any way limiting your scope of ability in this debate. As the affirmation, we have the responsibility and the privilege to set this as the debate. And you have to provide valid reasons why this is framing you out of the debate to have any reason to contest this. If we said this house is like me and that I think politics should be sports, that'd be abusive. But what we're doing right now isn't. Okay, so now let's talk about their definition of sports and like basically politics. So is my entire identity a debater? When I am outside of debate, when I am not debating in this room, is that my entire identity? Do I just wear a sign around my neck that says debater? No, of course I don't. And if I make political statements outside of debate, it doesn't mean that automatically I have made debate political. Saying that an athlete is their entire personality and that outside of sports, they should be able to do things doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So we didn't define sports because we assumed it was a prima facie thing that everybody here would understand. So let's give you some more clarity on that, Judge. Sports are when you go, you stand up, you play a game, or you compete in a competition, a sports competition, like a physical activity. You know, we all know what sports are. Standing outside of that, going to a march on the weekends, like when you're not in the game, isn't sports. Being an athlete isn't your entire identity. And trying to say that we should take away these people's autonomy outside of sports is completely ridiculous. We're just saying that we shouldn't have political demonstrations in sports. We should keep politics out of sports. Okay. Now, let's move on to their first contention and their main argument on advocacy. So basically, they tell us that we still need social change. Sure, but why do we need it in sports? This is the key thing that they fail to give you, Judge. They don't tell you why exactly we need this in sports. That is what their burden is as the negation. So they tell you that, yes, there are still issues in sports. So now let's address some of these examples. They tell you about Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali was still a boxer. He was not banned from the boxing league because of his political views. That is keeping politics out of sports. If somebody had banned Muhammad Ali because he was protesting white supremacy, that would have been putting politics into sports. We are saying that we should not exclude people just because of their political beliefs. That is our entire argument, that we shouldn't bring politics into this, that we should let athletes who are good athletes just compete on the basis of their athletic ability. What they do on the weekends is entirely their own business. Okay, let's address more things. So they try to give you this sort of really far-fetched argument about how one person, like, just existing is automatically a political statement. No, really, Judge, we're really going to go with this? We're really going to go that a person just existing is a political statement? No, it completely and utterly is not. What we are doing is we are keeping politics out of sports. That is our entire mission. So that is putting somebody who is Black into like a racially segregated baseball. That's keeping politics out of it. That is keeping racial politics out of it. Bringing people in who are of diverse backgrounds is keeping politics out of it. A person's identity is not a political statement. That's a ridiculous thing to claim. And that would completely frame us out of the debate if you bought that, Judge. Okay, let's address some more of these things. They tell you that like one person kneeling on a field automatically leads to social change. This completely isn't true, like whatsoever at all. This is completely ridiculous to claim that just like one person doing one thing. No, this is performative at best. Look, maybe it means something to that person, but it's not actually affecting any social change. You can't tell me that a single piece of legislation was passed because one guy went and took a knee on a field. Yes.
Do athletes have celebrity in the world that we live in?
Sure they do, but why do they need to express that during the middle of a football game? Again, no laws are just passed just because one person does one thing. That's not how the world works. And claiming it is completely and utterly ridiculous. So freedom of expression. Let's address freedom of expression. What we are doing is we are just basically keeping sports as sports and keeping politics on the side. This is allowing these people to completely and utterly express their humanity. Calling for anything else is utterly ridiculous. Okay. So what athletes do in their private lives obviously is not sports. If an athlete goes and, I don't know, makes a Twitter post or something, that isn't part of sports. Like, again, being an athlete isn't their entire identity. Sports are when you are on the field, when you are playing, when you are doing athletic things. Like, your own personal life doesn't. And like trying to claim this completely frames us out of our entire case. And this leaves no ground on the affirmation side. So this is abusive at best. Okay, so now let's respond to their refutations to our case. Okay, so basically they say that the only reason Russia was kicked out was because of doping. This is completely and utterly untrue, Judge. Russia was, okay, yes, I see your expression. Yes, let's adjust this. Okay, so yes, Russia has been kicked out for doping, but the reason why they were kicked out of the 2022 Olympics was because of the war with Ukraine. The IOC made a statement about it. They're like, we're not really allowed to cite sources in this tournament, so I'm not going to read you the exact statement, but I'm telling you, Judge, this was not just because of doping. Doping was a separate issue. And we can give you other examples that are political. For example, Belarus. Belarus wasn't doping, but they were also kicked out of this 2022 Olympics. This was a clear act that was hurtful to those athletes. My opponents respond to this POI with a cute little quip about, oh yeah, it was harder because they had to be tested for doping. No, it was harder for them because their entire country was excluded on the basis of something that they didn't do. We do not punish people for things that they didn't do. That is what our entire legal system is based on. No, thank you. Okay, so let's take this. Let's say that my dad committed a crime. He hasn't, but let's say he did. Does that mean that I should automatically be put in jail just because like of something that somebody else did that happens to reflect on me? No, of course it doesn't. This is a political statement. Keeping people out of it because of a war is a political statement. And this isn't fair to those athletes because they didn't do anything. Okay, so then they say that like undermining unity is necessary to create civil change. Look, civil change is great. We can all agree on that. But it doesn't have to be in the middle of a sports game. You shouldn't have to stand up and like be able to demonstrate this to like make this political. This isn't something that we need to do. Okay, then they really give you no response to our unfair and equal standards point. Like this contention just completely flows through. So we tell you that Japan in World War II like was kicked out of the 1948 Olympics because of this. We're telling you that the US that Japan should not have been kicked out because those Japanese athletes didn't do anything. There are plenty of people who protest what their government does. Why should they be excluded from this in sports? They give you no refutation to this, and this is because they can't, Judge. They don't give you anything. They say that this is happening no matter what. It shouldn't happen. That's the entire thing that we're arguing for. We're arguing that this shouldn't happen. And if you want to take their definition of a rational actor, then this goes underneath it. We shouldn't have this happen because if somebody's a rational actor, then they shouldn't kick people out just because of things that they didn't do. So for fairness, for athletes to actually have their own rights, their right to exist in their sports and not be kicked out, you must vote AF. Thank you. Okay. I'll pull my timer.
Okay, so if everyone's ready, I'm going to give a quick off-time roadmap. So first, I'm going to go down through affirmative's case and our responses to that. And then I'm going to go over our negation case and their responses to our case. And if I have time at the end, I'm going to kind of solidify the case as a whole. Oh my gosh, wait, just sign me out. It just literally signed me out of my computer. I'm so sorry. Wait. What is happening right now? Okay, thank you. Sorry. Okay, on my first word, starting now. Hello, Judge. My name is Carter Mitchell, and I am the second negation speaker for the resolution. This House would keep politics out of sports. So first off, let's just go over this framework issue as a whole. So one, they try to say that they reject our idea that like using the IOC as this like actor here is inherently skewing us out of the debate. I want to bring up two key flaws with making this only about the Olympics. One, the Olympics happen every 2 years. It is one sports event that happens every 2 years. That means you're skewing out about 95% of other sports events. You're skewing out FIFA, you're skewing out NBA finals, you're skewing out all of these other sports events that if people are able to make political actions in them, cause concrete changes. And even if you do buy this idea that the IOC, like in our world where the IOC should be the thing that we're focusing on here, they concede that the IOC is corrupt and the IOC's main goals are to make a profit. So it would be in the IOC's best interest to not keep politics out of sports. That is why they agree with people like China, because they're going to give them the profit revenue. In one second after my point, they're going to give them that money and they don't care what their political opinions are. And they are taking a stand with that. What's your POA?
Okay, is any sports organization whatsoever inherently completely perfect and not corrupt or biased at all?
That's not the point that we're making here. We're saying that the IOC is completely corrupt, and you concede to that. So that kind of makes your whole case fall. And moving on, let's talk about this idea of our weighing mechanism, which is social change. They basically say, but why do we need it in sports? But they just do not respond to the fact that social change in sports leads to direct advocacy. We talk about how Colin Kaepernick and like unapologetic protested the lack of action being taken and against U.S. lawmakers. We talk about Jackie Robinson. We talk about Derrick Rose. We talk about all of these people that made changes in their sports during their games as well, and that became a major catalyst to strike up movements, to strike political change, policy change, advocacy that has lasted decades after. In response to their first contention about how athletes are like independent of sports, they say that they should just keep it outside of sports. But what they don't understand here is that they gain celebrity through their sports. So yes, what they do in game matters, and we bring up multiple examples of that. But what they're doing outside of the game also reflect on the sports that they are playing. They cannot come up here and redefine what it means to like be outside of sports in their second speech. And also, we bring up multiple examples of this happening within the sports games themselves. Next, they bring up this example of like, in response to the Russia point, they say that this is not true and like Belarus got kicked out. But one, they just do not respond to the warning at all that my first speaker makes, that these athletes were still able to compete in the Olympics just under the ROC instead of the Russian flag. And why is this? Is because of the years and decades of cheating that we saw years before. That is why there's this kind of unstable relationship between the Olympics and Russia, not only because of their actions, but also because of the fact that they continue to cheat year after year. And they have no response to this. And also, Belarus athletes could also compete, just not under the Belarusian flag. They also do not respond to that. Moving on, they bring up this like idea of undermining change. No, thank you. They bring up this like undermining change, and like they're like, once again, why do you have to do this in sports? They ask all of these rhetorical questions, but why it's important to do this in sports is because of the publicity that you get through these sports. Like even if you buy the idea that we should be focusing on the Olympics, being able to have this kind of publicity on the national stage is good for enacting social change. Is good for what we should be valuing the most here in this round. In a world where people are able to keep their politics in sports, they can start the social change. We bring up examples of Jackie Robinson, who was the first Black MLB player and a catalyst to end the racial segregation in professional football. We bring up Colin Kaepernick. We bring up all of these examples of why it's important to have the inherent publicity of actual sports events. Next, in response to their third contention about like how it's unfair and unequal standards, they say that this flows through, but it doesn't. One, we say that the IOC aligns itself politically anyways. And two, we say that Japan has been in the Olympics every year since World War II. And we prove to you that even when the IOC did align itself with the United States during that time, they still allowed Japan to continue to compete. And even if you don't buy that the IOC allows for many other quote unquote kind of shady politically countries to still compete. We see North Korea, we see all of these other people in other places being able to compete. They're not being prejudiced against the athletes themselves. They're still able to compete. So that kind of undermines this idea of like unequal standards.
POI.
Yeah.
Okay, are you aware that about 70% of the Belarusian team was not allowed to compete in the Olympics in our most recent Olympic Games because of the Russia-Ukraine war?
That is inherently incorrect. They were able to compete. I don't know where you like pulled this random statistic from, but like even if you don't buy that, these athletes were still able to compete. Do not buy what they just said. Moving on. The first contention about in response to our first contention about advocacy, they basically said that like we shouldn't exclude people, and in their world they're advocating for that. But we're not saying that but what they're saying is that you are not allowed to express your political opinions. And why we're saying that is extremely important is because in sports you have the unique ability of publicity. And they say that it's different now because of polarization, but what we say to that is in a world with all of this polarization, we need the social change. The social change is still needed, and it's even more important now than ever, especially with how closely tied identity is to politics and all of these other things. In response to like Roberto Clemente and all of these things, they say that it's like people just existing isn't them making a political statement, but you kneeling on the field, you being the first African-American person, you being the first gay person, or any of these things to participate in these movements Or wearing a shirt that says I can't breathe is inherently not you just existing, it's you making a political statement against the system, against your government. And then they said is the only reason they basically have against our first contention of advocacy is just saying that they shouldn't do it in sports. But what we say to that is, so what, like, we should do it in sports. We live in a world that where athletes have the unique ability to gain celebrity through playing these sports. Once they have that celebrity stardom, they can try to advocate for social change. And one, they do not respond to our impacts of this at all. That it limits your autonomy when you're not the athlete's autonomy if they're not able to express what they truly feel. And two, we athletes have the ability to create substantial social change. They only use like one example and try to say that it's only people just existing, but we bring up many examples of people using their celebrity within the sport to actually enact real change. In response to our second contention about freedom of expression, they basically say that this is ridiculous. You can't just say our argument is ridiculous and not respond to it at all. Your voice matters. They have the right to say and think whatever they want. When you tell an athlete they must stay out of sports, you are limiting them depending just because of their stature in life. We have to remember the impacts on these athletes too. Taking away their autonomy undermines their humanity. And when someone's humanity is undermined, that leads to a myriad of problems, which they just do not respond to. This second contention is extremely important because in their world, you are limiting the athlete's freedom of speech. So let's take two comparisons here. We can live in a world, you should buy our ideas under their world as well, but the IOC, because you can buy the idea that the IOC wants to keep politics in sports because they are focused on making a profit. They do not care what the politics of your country is. And two, you can buy in our world that this leads to inherent social change, a world where we should be focusing on this. This weighing mechanism goes completely dropped by them, and their only response to that is like, why do we need it in sports? But why we do need it in sports is because of the inherent ability to have publicity and the inherent celebrityhood that you get when you become an athlete. With that being said, this is why you should vote for the negation side of this debate.
Okay, cool. Oh,
Sorry.
all right, awesome. Is everyone ready? Okay, cool. Quick off-time roadmap. I'm going to go over like the framework issues in this, like the key framework issues in this debate, their points, our points, and it'll be implicit weighing throughout, but then I'll like crystallize the weighing at the end. Cool. I'll begin in 3, 2, 1. All right. Hello again, judges. My partner and I still strongly negate the resolution that this house would keep politics out of sports. Let's go over some framework issues. So one, the biggest framework issue in this round is the definition of this house. We think we're winning no matter what, but let's go over why the IOC shouldn't be considered here. We say that the IOC is one of like tons of like sports agencies, and that one, not only is it one of the most corrupt, but two, it's like one that only happens every 2 years. And so you skew out like 99% of sports events here. But also like we think that we still win if the IOC just like comes up and if the IOC actually like is the actor here, because the warranting that the IOC is corrupt and mainly after profit goes completely conceded in their second speech, and they're not allowed to bring up a response to it in their third speech. And insofar as we win that the IOC makes money from having politics in sports because like China gives it more money and like all of these, and like giving China power is a political choice, and this also doesn't get responded to, we win on the IOC like wanting more stuff. We win on the IOC wanting politics in sports, because when we consider what it would do, we have to consider its goals, and its goals are making money, which goes conceded, and because it makes money from keeping politics in sports, they by default want politics in sports. But two, let's talk about the conceded weighing mechanism in this round, which is social change. We tell you that in this round with the rational actor, we're weighing this debate under social change. Who can promote the most social change? We tell you that they literally have no access to social change whatsoever. They don't make a single argument under this weighing mechanism, and insofar as there are no arguments that come from them here, we're winning here too by default on this weighing mechanism. But let's go over their case one by one. So on athletic skills, this is more like a Russia-Belarus contention than like an actual like broader thing. So let's go over those examples, because that's all they're warranting here. One, on Russia was still able to compete under the ROC. I think Belarus was also able to compete under the ROC, but even if they weren't, that's just one, this like still extend the warranting from Japan. It's one Olympics where they're not able to compete, and then they're able to compete in all the other Olympics. And at most, this affects like less than 100 people. There's no magnitude impacts here. But also let's look at the impacts of this contention with both get refuted, and they don't go after them. One, on slippery slope, I tell you that this warranting that slippery slope warranting is inherently like a fallacy, but also two, that the slippery slope argument just doesn't work because it assumes warranting that hasn't happened, and also only affects like 100 people. And also two, on careers, I tell you, like, again, this didn't really affect their careers, but also like it affects less than 100 people. It's a very minimal impact. But two, on undermining unity, we tell you that social change is key towards long-term growth, and they have no impacts under social change, and that unity needs to happen through social change, and that the only people that get alienated here are the people who don't want the social change. And we tell you that that's good, and that also doesn't get refuted in their second speech. Do not let them come up here and say anything to it. On unfair and equal, we tell you that, again, this warranting of it's like one Olympics, these impacts just have no weight in this debate. But let's go over the Ned case. So one, on advocacy, they basically just respond to this by making a bunch of like rhetorical questions. But let's go through them. They say, why is this important to do in sports? We tell you that because it's the center stage. It's the one where millions of people are watching, and that just does not get refuted throughout this entire debate. They say, what change actually happens? We tell you that legislation has happened. We tell you that the civil rights movement was catalyzed by sports in a large sense, and that led to a ton of legislation. We tell you that the end of segregation happened in baseball, which leads to thousands of people getting millions over the last like century. They also literally just respond to this by saying, are we really buying this, Judge? We tell you that, yeah, you're really buying it, because social change needs to happen. And in events where millions of people watch and see social change happen, that's when we make the most change. On freedom of expression, this doesn't really get refuted here. They just call it ridiculous over and over again. We tell you that freedom of expression is really key here, because once we undermine autonomy, we undermine the careers of these players, we undermine the humanity of these players. And so actually we impact out to all of their arguments. But let's go over some Wayne here. So one, just on magnitude, their biggest impact is like slightly declining entertainment value in the careers of less than 100 athletes, but we impact no matter what out to massive social change in sports and beyond. Like we tell you that no matter what, even if there's social change in like one sports league, that leads to thousands of people being helped. We tell you that no matter what, we're going to access like way more social change here, because no matter what, we help like millions of people. They help a couple hundred, maybe every 20 years. We say that we're winning this round from the get-go. We also say we're winning on the Wayne mechanisms here. No, like obviously. Thank you. Thank you, and please vote for the negation.
All right. I have a lot to go through. Super quick off-time roadmap as well. I believe I'll be going over some overview framework, and then 3 or 4 voters. My time will start on my next word. Okay, so they tell you that the IOC is corrupt and political. This is true, but however, any rational actor can also have their bias, right? For example, and we are the actor of change. The affirmation in this case is trying to change the corrupt, trying to change the political IOC, right? They tell you a lot of instance of like a segregated baseball game is like inherently political, right? All the movements they mentioned in the past are literally movements that's trying to make sports less political, right? Every example they gave you is an attempt to make sports more neutral and more equal. And that is what the AF is like preferring, right? Because the end goal is neutrality, not more polarization. But let's get into why you should prefer the IOC as this house. Because first of all, it is really predictable. It is literally the biggest sporting event. And also the examples they gave you are also from the Olympics too. So I don't see a reason to not include it, right? And also they tell you that we tell you that a rational actor is basically just calling for judge intervention of their own values, because a rational actor is really vague. And at this point, I feel like it doesn't really matter, because we both pulled example from a lot of sports league, right? We just use the IOC because it has the most publicity, right? It allows the athletes to get the most exposure, which works on the both worlds. Okay. And for 3 reasons why every sports event is going to be corrupt. We already tell you that my partner said every sporting event has monetary incentive, and every organization has individual biases. And utilitarianism is going to be the most objective metrics, right? Because it gives the most ground to both teams. We can still include social change under utilitarianism, right? But also we live in a realistic world, so we should also consider like the monetary incentives and entertainment values. Okay, first voter is going to be athletes' life. They tell you a lot of like grand scheme social movements, but we tell you that private life also does matter. Like they tell you that athletes can promote change outside of competition. This is possible in both worlds, Judge. We never said that athlete couldn't do it outside of competition. And right away in my first speech, I told them that they just can't do it during like rounds. So like this social change during their private life is completely possible in both worlds. We access all of their impacts. In my first speech, I told you that they can still have their own political opinion. It's just that they cannot express it during the games, right? This is not mutually exclusive at all. Okay, so second point is about how politics during sports then is uniquely bad, which is going to be the voter here, right? Sports is good because a lot of people watch it, right? And it's good for social change only if a lot of people watch it, right? So we literally de-link, bring their argument, right? If it gets polarized, politicized, less people watch it. If less people watch it, that means those athletes get less platform. If they get less platform, they get less social change, right? We literally bring their argument and de-link it, right? Because like if you decrease the entertainment values, that cause athletes to lose popularity. And also, well, if less popularity and less publicity also means less social change in general, right? So if the athletes want to gain popularity and publicity, they have to play good, right? They have to be like at the peak of their like skills and stuff like that. But they can still promote that during their private lives, right? It's never mutually exclusive. We're just saying that not during games, right? But instead, promoting that during games uniquely harm the viewers and making them less likely to watch those games and therefore decrease their publicity in private life and also their ability to make changes in their private life, which we think is bad, right? Okay, so I think third voter is going to be on polarization. They only tell you the good examples, right? But also there's tons of bad examples. So do you want to risk it? Why not just keep it out completely, right? There's like probability here, right? Okay, they tell you that Russia was banned because of cheating. Well, obviously cheating is bad, but like again, that's not the topic here. They were also kicked out because of the involvement with Ukraine, right? So what we do see is that that still made individual athletes harder to compete, right? That still made them face like stereotypes and biases. So we still have the impact of loss of career and money, which they do not access. They only tell you this grand scheme impact of social change, but we tell you the life of individual athletes that spend a lot of time and money training, and that's just like getting completely being treated unfairly because of like politicization, right? They tell you that the IOC is really corrupt and it's political, which is like the status quo. And we want to change that. Again, we are the agent of change. We're saying that we should not make the IOC corrupt and political. We should not just kick Japan out because of our own value judgment, right? We're saying that we want to change the IOC. We want to change the biggest, most representative international agent. We want to make sure that it can be less political instead of like inserting its own like judgment of like kicking Japan or kicking any other country. And again, perhaps the biggest voter and the last voter is going to be on social change, right? This is literally a wash. In our framing, we still permit athletes to compete, to express their own opinions outside of games. But what we do have, which is net good, is that we allow like the entertainment to continue. We allow the funding to continue for sports. Versus in their world, people are going to stop watching sports because they get upset, and all the social change doesn't even happen in the first place. Thank you.
Cool, great debate,
All right.
guys.
Great round, everybody.
All right, thanks everyone. So as the judges, we're gonna go deliberate and individually fill out our tab rooms, and then when we're back, we'll reveal the decision. And if the judges want to do RFDs, then we'll do RFDs.